The following program is seen statewide on California Public Television.
You know, so far, every one of our Videolog summer specials has had a theme to it. We had a food show and a flower show and a show about Kern County. Well, tonight's special is a little different. There is no theme to tonight's program. What we've done is taken 4 or 5 brand new Videologs and just strung them together. I call this our A Little Bit of Everything show, and it's coming up right now. Welcome to 118th Street here in South Los Angeles, a nice, quiet residential street full of houses with well-manicured lawns. And right here on the corner of 118th Street and Wadsworth is a house and a lawn that just about everybody on this street knows about. It's famous. Why is it so famous? Well, for the past 45 years, it's been under the constant love and care of Mrs. Wilmon Brookins. And you can find Mrs. Brookins out in her yard clipping and pruning and mowing every day. To say her lawn is well manicured is an understatement. But what grabs your eye right away are the boxwoods around the house. Because you see, they're not ordinary boxwoods. Over the years, Mrs. Brookins has pruned them to look like couches and chairs. Now, what about the neighborhood kids? Do they come over a lot and want to sit on your couch and chairs?
Yes, the kids, they always coming over, sitting down on it. I just pick on the window and they jump up and run off. But I don't mind the kids, but the grown-up.
Oh, you mean you have grown-ups want to sit on the couch?
Yeah, the couch and the chairs, yeah.
So it seems Mrs. Brookins really started something with her couches and chairs. Because for years now, young and old alike in the neighborhood have had this uncontrollable urge to try them out. Take a seat. I know the day I was there, it was nonstop. Have you ever sat in her chair?
When I was little.
Huh?
When I was little and I got in trouble.
So you mean you used to come by here when you were little and sit on those hedges?
Yep.
And how would you get in trouble?
Wait a minute.
Well, I would sit down and squash it, and my mother would kind of scold me about it because she's cut this herself.
Uh-huh. But she wouldn't scold you about it?
Oh, no, she was nice.
But your mother would?
Yeah.
Well, now that you're grown up and Miss Brookins is here watching, you want to go sit in the big chair?
No, I might fall through it. It's just that's like a plant.
No, it's like a chair. Come on over here. Let me show you. It works. Your mother won't get mad at you now.
Are you sure I ain't gonna fall through this?
Here.
Sit down.
Oh, yeah, it is rather nice.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Now sit back.
No.
Now, when you were a little girl, did you ever try and sit in one of those chairs?
Well, like she said, we would try, but we would run when she tapped on the window.
So you knew you shouldn't be sitting in that chair.
Right, but it's something a child has within them. When they see something that looks unusual and really pretty, you have that thought in your mind, I wonder if I can go sit down over there. So we did, we tried.
That's good. That's good to sit down.
Okay, who hadn't had a seat? Come on.
Go ahead.
Sit back and enjoy yourself.
Come on. Over here.
This one right over here. Right here.
Are you kidding?
No.
Heads just don't hold you up.
Well,
Have a seat.
You don't
sit
sit
down
on
there.
that.
Sit down there.
No.
Sit back. Sit back.
Well, how about it?
Isn't that
It
something?
is something.
Sit
I
back.
didn't expect this. Hey, man, you're not going to believe this. Look here. I think she's got something under there.
I know. She doesn't have any. You don't have anything under there.
Everything under there. That's just the trunk of it.
People are fascinated with it. People stop their cars during holidays and just look at it, take pictures. To me, it's a work of art, and I think to other people it's a work of art. She sees it as being something she enjoys to get up and do, and she doesn't really call it art. I don't think she relates to it that way. She relates to it as something that is fun for her to do, keeps her active, and keeps her creative, doing something.
Well, whatever the name for it is,
right?
It works.
It works.
So thanks to Mrs. Wilmon Brookins' ingenuity and artistic touch, For over 40 years now, children of all ages on 118th Street have had the opportunity to sit on some rather unusual and fun couches and chairs. I'd like to thank Mrs. Brookins for her hospitality and for letting me try out one of her special chairs. But now it's time to leave her beautiful front yard and go over to Griffith Park for some singing.
Gotta get my old tuxedo dress, gotta sew a button on my vest, 'cause tonight I gotta look my best. Lulu's back in town, gotta get a half a buck somewhere. Gotta stick my shoes and shine my hair. Myself a Lulu's back in town.
Well, here we are at the Equestrian Center in Burbank. Tonight's party, I guess you'd call it, is being sponsored by 3 or 4 different barbershop quartet organizations here in the Southland. The event is being held to honor someone who is in town. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Lulu. It is a group of guys who formed their own barbershop quartet a few years ago. They call themselves the Quiet Don Quartet, and they're good.
Old heads, horse, and party, we'll be the same as we started, just traveling along, singing a song, side by side. Through all kinds of weather, what if the sky should fall? Just as long as we're together, it doesn't matter at all. When the old heads, chorus, and party, we'll be the same as we started, just traveling along, singing a song, side by side.
I told you they were good. And now let me share another bit of information with you. These guys are not Americans. They're from the Soviet Union, the only barbershop quartet in the entire Soviet Union. They were visiting Los Angeles as the guest of some of our local barbershoppers. And on this particular evening, several hundred lovers of barbershop music came together to welcome the Soviets and enjoy their music.
Oh, Chattanooga choo-choo, won't you choo-choo me home? Oh, Chattanooga choo-choo, won't you choo-choo me home? Choo-choo me home.
Now, how good are these guys, really?
Actually, they're fabulous. But if you were to judge them according to what kind of training they'd had from our hobby, I would have to say that they were fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Because most of us as barbershoppers have had the training of all of the other barbershoppers. They have no one else in the Soviet Union to give them any instruction. They've just picked it up by singing the right notes and their own sort of feeling of what music is and the joy of the style.
There was a wonderful reaction here tonight from the audience when they performed.
Because they're so good.
Jingle bells, all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in the one-horse open sleigh. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in the one-horse open sleigh. The one-horse open sleigh.
What do people in the Soviet Union think about barbershop quartet music? Do they think it's kind of strange or wonderful, or?
At first, this style of singing unknown in Russia.
They've never heard it before?
Never heard. But we have our audience, which tried to visit our concerts. And this audience, these people, very like this style. It's not strange. It's very good music. And
they like it?
Yeah, they like it.
Are you famous in the Soviet Union? Are you stars?
No, we're not stars in the Soviet Union, but we're famous in Rostov-on-Don. We're famous in south of Russia. We have some concert tours.
Now, these Soviet barbershoppers may not be stars in their own country, but on this particular night in Los Angeles, they definitely got the star treatment. Everyone crowding around them during intermission to say hello and let them know how much they enjoyed their music.
What are you telling our friend here?
How wonderful he was tonight. How wonderful this is that they came to America to entertain us and sang our songs. It's just overwhelming. Brings tears to my eyes.
Спасибо. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What did you expect when you came tonight?
I told one of my friends on the way in, I thought, well, now, what can these guys possibly do? Because they'll probably sing the Volga Boatman or something like that. And I mentioned, I hope they don't do the squatting knee dance, you know, like you think of a Russian.
See, we're guilty of stereotyping, aren't we?
Yes, very definitely, just like habit stereotyping as well.
Right.
But I was overwhelmed. These people are fantastic, just amazing. I still can't believe what I heard. It was beautiful.
You know, just about anyone who was in that hot and crowded room over at the Equestrian Center in Griffith Park will tell you it was a night that will long be remembered. It was the night the Soviet barbershoppers came to town. 4 guys from halfway around the world, 3 of whom didn't even speak English, who reached out with their music and touched us all. No doubt about it, the Soviet barbershoppers were a hit. Next, we go to Pomona to meet a lady who's also very popular. Well, here we are in Pomona attending a birthday party, and it's being held at the library, and it's complete with all kinds of people. It's standing room only. We have the cake, and the interesting thing about this birthday party is that it's being held for a lady who's 100 years old. And she still looks pretty good, doesn't she?
Very good.
Well, it's not for you, it's for a... I didn't mean it to sound like that.
I understand. The lady is elegant.
And indeed, the lady is elegant. So elegant that hundreds of Pomona residents turned out for her party just to get a look at her. You see, she's a real celebrity. Has her picture all over the place. On the official city seal, the Chamber of Commerce seal, and even on plates. And in case you're wondering just who this lovely lady is, here's the story. Pomona is located right in the middle of one of Southern California's richest agricultural regions. And years ago, it was literally filled with orchards and vineyards and orange groves. In fact, it was the hub for shipping this produce all over the country. Over 100 years ago, the residents of this area held a contest to name their settlement, and the name Pomona won. Pomona being the Roman goddess of fruit trees. What an appropriate name for this area. Now, just after this happened, Reverend C.F. Loop, a Pomona resident, took his family on a European vacation. And while in Italy, he saw a centuries-old statue of the goddess Pomona. Well, he immediately fell in love with it and decided to have an exact copy made and shipped back to California as a gift to the city of Pomona. The marble statue of the goddess Pomona arrived in the city of Pomona June the 13th, 1889. And she's been on display in the city library ever since. Now, over these past 100 years, she's moved around town from time to time as the library location has changed. And recently, she underwent a thorough cleaning. Through it all, she's become an honest-to-goodness local fixture. And she's won the hearts of all who've seen her.
She's been here 100 years. First of all, a gift of a private citizen who had a very generous spirit, who donated the statue to the city, and the city didn't know what to do with it. Here was this $1,000 statue weighing 600 pounds that had been shipped from Italy, and the only way they could solve the problem of keeping it someplace was to make an agreement with the new Library Association. If the library would house the statue of Pomona, the city would pay for the light and the heat to keep the library comfortable.
Really?
But the goddess is such a symbol, and I realize that I get a lot of respect in the community just as the keeper of the goddess.
Really?
Not just as the librarian, but he has the goddess Pomona.
So you're probably one of the few librarians in the country who has this calling, not only to keep the books, but to keep the goddess.
That's right, the family heirloom.
Now, ladies, how many years have you been looking at the goddess?
50 years.
50?
60 years.
Uh-huh.
And mine's about 62.
Do you still see new and wonderful things about her every time you look at her?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's just terrific, the beauty of the goddess.
I used to always grab that foot when I was about, 8 years old. When I'd come in and go by her in the library, and I'd always have to hit that foot of hers.
Why would you grab her?
Because I wanted to touch her.
Uh-huh. Well, now that's why they've got her in a case now, is to protect her against people like you.
But when she was in the old library, she just stayed out, and you could just touch her all you wanted to, but I liked her foot.
Now, I saw you all over here looking at the goddess. What were you pointing at? What were you looking at?
Well,
what intrigued you about
because she has sandals that are not a pair.
Well, now, wait a minute, though. What do you mean her sandals are not a pair?
They're not. They're different.
The sandals are different.
They don't show up as different now as they used to when they were dirtier, because of the dark lines, you see.
So she's wearing an unmatched pair of...
Nobody knows. Nobody knows how it ever happened.
One of the little-known facts about the goddess Pomona.
Yeah.
Her sandals don't match. Now, is she a full-fledged goddess? Because a lot of people say they've never heard of the goddess Pomona.
No, there are hierarchies. She really was a wood nymph. And
a wood nymph.
A wood nymph, exactly. And she was a guardian. Most accounts, classical accounts, refer to her as a guardian as opposed to a goddess. So she was a lesser goddess.
But she guarded the orchards and the fruits and things like that?
She guarded them, and also... remember, she had a pruning hook instead of a javelin, and so she often grafted. She made hybrids. She watered the plants. She gathered them. She loved the plants. In fact, Ovid says, love the plants more than the men.
You know, times change, and the community of Pomona, which was once a major citrus center, is now a bustling city, and just about the only citrus groves left are the ones on the campus of Cal Poly Pomona. But some things are the same. The goddess Pomona still stands watch, a 100-year-old lady who's still very elegant. We now leave the goddess and visit with two more ladies. Well, here I am sitting between sweet Lorraine and lovely Louise, two ladies I'm sure you'll remember because we all first met them a little over a year ago on a Videolog. Well, since we first met, these two ladies have moved quite a bit. In fact, their move is what this Videolog update is all about. Now, these two ladies, along with Ironfoot Eva and the Minor 49er, are part of a rather remarkable collection of authentic folk art. Here's the story. Back in 1941, a former government trapper with a 7th grade education and boundless energy moved to Southern California from Michigan, bringing with him his wife and 4 children. His name was John Ian, and he was a real character who preferred to be called Old Trapper. As soon as he got to California, he bought a vacant lot in Sun Valley and built a motel. He also began to create characters out of cement, characters from the Old West. Now, Old Trapper was completely self-taught, never took an art lesson in his life, but he loved the Old West so much, this project became his passion. He modeled the faces after those of his family, painted the cement with bright enamel, and installed the whole congregation in his front garden, dubbed appropriately enough Boot Hill, because there's also a collection of humorous tombstones all over the place. Well, the whole thing grew and grew and eventually filled the front of the motel and overflowed into outdoor display cases.
Old Trapper died in 1981. But his collection lives on. In fact, it's been designated an official California historical landmark. His daughter, Rosemarie Farish, took me on a tour of the place, which requires some fancy footwork, and introduced me to some members of the family.
Now, who is this over here?
This is my niece Judith, alias Clementine.
He must have liked her because he's really got her flossied up.
He loved her very much. It was his oldest granddaughter.
And next to her is?
My brother Clifford, alias Minor 49er.
Minor 49er. And last but not least, if you would go over and sit by the statue of yourself, I want to see what kind of a likeness he was able to do of you. Two Gun Rosie, eh?
Mm-hmm.
You think you all look alike?
When I was younger, yes.
Now, this is your brother?
No, it is my brother-in-law, George.
Your brother-in-law, George, who is portrayed as Lonesome George here.
Correct.
How long would it take him to make a big figure like old Lonesome George here?
3 to 6 months with daily care of wetting burlap sacks, smoothing the finishes, adding details, and then finally painting them.
So this took him up to 6 months to make something like
Depending
this.
on, and as much as maybe a year on the massive, bigger-than-life statues out front.
Tell me, how did he get his ideas? What would he get his ideas from?
Just from within his head. Just in his head. No one really knows. He just go off and do things without even talking about it.
Did he use a mold on these things?
No molds. All hand freelance.
So he would just...
That's why they're out of proportion. There won't be 2 legs that are the same hardly or anything else. Everything's out of proportion.
So he would just mold them with his hands?
Hands, chisel, no modern tools, no electric tools. Faces were done by a live mask process where he'd lay us on a cot, grease our faces, put tubes up our nose and our mouth.
So you could breathe.
And a tapping process. You kept tapping as long as you were okay. If you quit tapping, then he knew you were in trouble. None of us ever had to pull off. I was the closest. If you look, I got a pinched line where I started to panic, and then I came back out of it, and he finished it.
Look, now we're right in the middle of Boot Hill over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would he come up with all these slogans?
He enjoyed coming up with words. My father really loved poetry, and I wouldn't doubt that he sat and read some poetry books. He thought about it. He had us kids give in feedback, friends give in feedback. He might have even copied stuff from old-time Boot Hills. He traveled across the U.S. 13 times. I'm sure he had his opportunities to obtain information.
Did he see this as art? How did he perceive this?
My father did not consider himself an artist. It was a hobby and a pastime to leave a memorial to his family. He enjoyed doing it. It was something to keep his mind and his hands active, but he did not have any idea that he was creating art.
Well, a lot has happened since I first visited Old Trapper's Lodge over 2 years ago. The adjoining Burbank Airport expanded and bought the land where the motel and all the folk art sat, which meant the family had to either see the statues destroyed or quickly find a new home for them. Well, we broadcast an appeal to our viewers for help and got a lot of responses, one of which turned out to be just perfect. And recently, the giant and extremely heavy concrete statues were hoisted and loaded and then transported to their new home. And what an ideal home it is, because Mr. Ian's folk art, Boot Hill and all, now occupies a hillside in Cleveland Park, on the agriculture campus at Pierce College in Woodland Hills.
We're very pleased because we see this as becoming one of the focal points in our agricultural area. We have tours of upwards of 10,000 school children every year, and they meet in this part of campus. They visit the livestock on campus. They take a tour, and I can envision them at the end having a picnic in this area here, getting their pictures taken with the various statues. And it's going to make an already memorable experience an even better one for youth. We have a harvest festival here at the end of October, and we're expecting that the San Fernando Valley Fair will be on campus here. So it was her father's wish that the place be visited as well too, particularly by young people, and I'm confident that this is absolutely the best place in the valley for that part of his dream to be fulfilled.
So this really was a perfect ending to a story that could have been not so perfect.
Exactly. It was a dream come true. It was something that the family really didn't anticipate happening. It was very special. We can only thank Mr. Moyer and the college for all their interest and effort, and that Dad's treasures have a home.
So in a day when so many landmarks which connect us to our past are being destroyed, chalk one up for the good guys. Mr. Ian's folk art deemed important enough to be declared an official California historical landmark, has been saved. Saved because family members weren't willing to see their father's work lost. And saved because the people at Pierce College were sensitive enough to help preserve this California treasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I told you it was going to be a little bit of everything. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the program for sharing their stories with us. And of course, I'd like to thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Huell Howser.
Goodbye, Tootsie, goodbye. Tootsie, don't cry. This nation should rather takes me away from you. No, listen to how sad it makes me. Kiss me, Tootsie, and then Tootsie, and then no, do it over again. Watch for the mail, I never fail. No, if you don't get a letter, then you'll know I'm in jail. Oh, Tootsie, Tootsie, don't cry, Tootsie, don't cry. Oh, Tootsie, goodbye, goodbye, Tootsie, goodbye.
Yay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Videolog is made possible through a generous grant from the Ralph M. Parsons Foundation.